Hey, what's up? My name's Justin. Welcome to 65 Drums. Today I want to talk about the drum modules with the best training features. This is something that not a lot of people talk about. Sometimes companies give it a little bit of coverage when they're promoting their drum set, but it's something that's usually like in the back of the drum module that you have to go dig around to find. There are people that like hate metronomes with their soul for some reason, and then other people that they just live or die by practicing to it every day. But a standard everyday metronome can't really compare to a drum module because a drum module gets input from the drum pads. It knows exactly how you're playing. It can track you how on the beat or off the beat you're playing. And so that's how they develop all these different training tools. So what I plan to do in this video is cover the big three companies, Roland, Alesis, and Yamaha, because they probably have like 80% market share in the United States. So it makes sense to focus on these three companies. And I'm just going to talk about the current lineup, not all the 5,000 modules they made in the past. So starting off with the Roland TD1, it looks like a brick on the surface of it, but it actually does have some features in it. So number one is called time check. Really simple feature. You play to a metronome, you set how fast you want it to go, and it will tell you how on the beat or off the beat you are playing. The next feature is called change up. This is where the metronome will cycle through time signatures. So, quarter notes, going to eighth notes, going to, triplets, the 16th notes. And that way you can like practice going through a bunch of strange, contortions in your practice. The next feature is called auto up and down. This is where the metronome slowly gets faster and then goes slower and then goes faster and then goes slower. It just basically helps you with endurance. The next feature is called quiet count. This is where the metronome plays and then goes away every fourth measure. And then you're hopefully playing on time where the metronome kicks back in. And then finally, the last training mode is called stroke balance. This helps you play more evenly. So for me, since I'm right-handed, I'm probably a little more right dominant, which means I'll probably hit a little harder. And this will basically help you balance out your playing so your strokes are incredibly even. All right, so moving on to the next drum module, the Roland TD4. This one does have some of the same features as the TD1. But it does have a new feature that the TD1 doesn't have. This one is called tempo check. So you're playing on beat to this metronome, and as you play on beat, the metronome actually disappears. It goes away. That's how you know you're playing to the metronome perfectly. And then when you start playing a little bit off beat, the metronome comes back, reminds you where you're supposed to play, tells you that you suck. And then as you play on beat again, the metronome disappears again. So that's actually a pretty cool feature. Okay, so moving on to the next drum modules, we have the TD11 and the TD15. They basically have all the same training features as the TD4 with the addition of something called warm-ups. Basically a more advanced version of change-up. Okay, so moving on to the Roland TD25, it only has 3 practice features: time check, quiet count, and warm-ups. We've already talked about all those, so I'm not really going to mention them again. You can put an MP3 file on, a USB stick, put it in the drum module, and you can play a section of that song over and over and over again. So that could be, contrived as a training feature. Because, for example, if you're trying to play this one drum fill perfectly and you don't want to have to keep rewinding the song over and over again, it's easier to put it on a thumb drive, stick it into the TD25 drum module, and then just loop that 10-second thing over and over and over again until you nail it. Moving on to the Roland TD30, it doesn't really have any practice features at all. I mean, it does have the metronome, and I think you can play songs from a USB thumb drive, but it doesn't have like warm-ups or anything like that. The TD50 does have one practice feature called quiet count. That's where the last bar or the last measure is muted in the metronome, but that's literally the only practice feature that it has. Okay, so now it's time to talk about Yamaha, starting off with the DTX 400 series. Now, just like the Roland TD1, you'll see that the entry-level drum sets, they always seem to have the most practice features. Number one is called Groove Check. This is where you can play the click and it'll tell you how on or off the beat you're playing. The row of buttons there, 1 through 10, will light up, going to the left or going to the right to show you how on or off the beat you are. The next one is called Rhythm Gate. This is where you play to the click, and the drums will only produce a sound if you're playing on the beat. This is actually a pretty unique feature that no other drum module actually has other than Yamaha drum modules. It basically mutes your drumming unless you're playing exactly on time. And you can actually adjust the difficulty mode too, so you can make it so if you're really, a beginner at drums and you don't want to be beaten up every time you play this mode, you can put it on easy mode. If you're really good and you want it to be very picky about your drumming, you can set it to hard mode. The next training mode is called measure break, just like that Roland mode, where basically it goes silent for a bar every now and then to make sure if you're still playing on time. The next training mode is called tempo up and down. This is where the metronome starts off slow and then gets faster and faster if you can play on beat. And if you start to suck, then it starts to slow it back down until you can play on beat again, then it will start to speed up. The next one is called change up. This plays you an ascending and descending sequence of subdivisions, quarter notes, triplets, and eighth notes, just like the Roland feature. The next one is called easy session. session. This is where you play along to internal songs, and literally any pad you hit will produce the right drum sound. The next training mode is called pad gate. It's basically the exact same thing as easy session, except the pads will only make a sound when you're playing exactly on tempo. I'm a little bit fuzzy on exactly what Groove Tracker is, so I'm just going to read you their official statement on what it is.
Groove Tracker makes it easy to play a number of different practice patterns, which will automatically reflect the speed and strength of your drumming. In addition, you can also freely add your own fills to the basic pattern.
The next training mode is called part mute. This is where you play to internal songs with the recording of the drums, and you can just mute individual sections of the drum set. So for example, if you're a beginner and you can't play this entire drum pattern, you can mute the kick drum part and just play the kick drum and listen to the computer play the rest of the drums. And then slowly you can mute the hi-hat and then just play the kick and the hi-hat, and on and on and on until you're the only one playing all the drum parts. And then the last training mode is called fast blast. You basically hit as many pads as fast as possible and you get a high score. So it's not really meant to make you a better drummer, it's just like a fun little mode. Alright, so moving on to the next drum module, we have the DTX 502. This one gives you pretty much all the training modes of the DTX 400 series: groove check, rhythm gate, measure break, tempo up and down, change up, pad gate, part mute, and fast blast. So moving on to the next two drum modules, we got the DTX 700 series and the DTX 900 series. The reason why I'm grouping these two things together is because they only have 3 training features: measure break, groove check, and rhythm gate. Those are nice features, so I'm glad they include them, and at least they have something on their flagship. Like the TD50 only has like 1 training mode, and the TD30 doesn't have any at all. Okay, so now it's time to talk about Alesis drum modules. Starting off with the Nitro, which is also known as the DM7, which is also known as the Surge drum module. They're all exactly the same thing. So the thing about this module is that it's not really clear exactly what these training modes are. We do know that there are 3 of them. The first one is called rhythm, the second one is called beat mode, and the third one is called song pattern mode. In rhythm mode, you play back to songs that they have stored inside of there, and then it gives you a percentage on how exactly you played to the pattern that you listen to. It just gives you a percentage. Did you play like 50% accurate, or did you play 90% accurate? I'm not exactly sure what all the other modes do. Okay, so moving on to the next drum modules, we have the Forge, the Command, the Crimson, and the DM10 Studio set of drum modules. As you can see, they're all the exact same body, and sometimes they're a little bit different. For example, like the Command drum module won't work with the 3-zone cymbal, but the Crimson module will. So there are some internal differences as far as hardware goes, but as far as like number of sounds, most of the time these modules are very similar to each other, and they all have the exact same training features.
Nothing.
The next module is the Alesis DM10 MK2 Pro. It does have some practice features inside. The first one is called Quiet Count. This is where the metronome goes out every now and then comes back in to see if you're still on beat. The next one is called Beat Check. This is where it shows you how on and off the beat you are. The next one is called Change Up. This is where a sequence of quarter notes and triplets and etc. Again, these are all features that you'll see on Roland and Yamaha drum modules. But thankfully, this does have some features that at least the Nitro and the Forge, Command, Crimson, and DM10 Studio modules don't have. And then finally, we have the Alesis Strike, and unfortunately, it doesn't have any training features at all. I'm going to switch over to talking about a couple software programs in a second, but I do want to mention that from this list, I think like the best 2 drum modules for training features would probably be the Roland TD11 and then also the Yamaha DTX 502. Now, the reason why I'd say the 502 is better is just because it has a few more modes, but either one of those will give you quite a few training features that you can use to improve your drumming. I do want to mention a couple of pieces of software that you can download to your laptop for people that want to have more training modes or different ways to learn how to play drums that don't necessarily just live on the drum module itself. So the first piece of software does cost money. This one is called the Roland DT1 Drum Tutor software. I think this costs somewhere around $100. It works with all modern Roland drum modules. You basically plug a USB cable from your module into your laptop and away you go. It kind of works like Guitar Hero. You basically play to these internal songs and it just uses MIDI data. So you can load in whatever MIDI data from whatever song you want into it and you can learn that. The reason why this has an edge is because you can switch over to looking at real drum notation, and that's something that most software out there does not have. And like I said before, it works off of standard MIDI files. So literally any song you want to learn how to play, just get the MIDI file somewhere online, load that in, and you can play it exactly like the drummer originally played it in the song. Moving on to the next piece of software, we have something called Melodics. I've already done an entire video covering this. If you want to go check it out, I'll link it below, or maybe you can just search for it online. Melodics basically lets you plug in whatever drum set you want. It doesn't have to be Roland. and you play to songs that they have inside, but they're in lesson format. So they gradually get harder and harder. It's a really cool system. It does seem slightly gimmicky to me because there's not quite enough lessons for the amount of money they want you to pay for it. But just playing through the free stuff will make you a better drummer automatically, and it is very fun to play along to. These next pieces of drum software really aren't lesson based, but they will make you a better drummer if you use them. One is called Phase Shift, another is called Frets on Fire, and another one is called DTX Mania. These are basically free versions of like Rock Band, so you plug in your drum set and you're playing along the songs, and you can load in songs. And then, of course, I do have to mention Rock Band because you don't have to use that really terrible plastic drum set that comes with Rock Band. And you can play famous songs and plug in your own drum set. You're just going to have to buy the Rock Band MIDI Pro adapter, and you can plug your electronic drum set into your Xbox One or your PlayStation 4. Even though you could say these 4 pieces of drum software are kind of like entertainment based, if you actually master how to play them, you'll be able to do some pretty complex stuff. Okay, so that is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Got some really interesting videos coming up over the next couple of months. I've got several companies that are sending me review products, so that will be fun. Also, if you guys have any topics you want me to cover, leave those down in the comments below. It makes my job making videos a little bit easier when I know what you guys want me to cover. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you in a few.